Welcome to Lead for Good, a podcast for nonprofit leaders of all titles and all experience levels. This is a show where the audience will meet and get to know top nonprofit leaders. Together, we will take a deep dive into nonprofit leadership, endeavoring to uncover and unpack the most important characteristics, traits, strategies, and actions of successful nonprofit leaders. Through this journey together, we desire to help you, the nonprofit leader, grow your knowledge and capabilities to lead for good. We want you to achieve your full potential as leaders in the sector. So, welcome to the conversation. We're glad you joined us today. Without further delay, let's join our host, Chris Looney, as he interviews yet another extraordinary leader who is truly leading for good. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to Lead for Good, a show for nonprofit leaders of all titles and experience levels. My name is Chris Looney, and I have the good fortune to be your host for this deep dive into nonprofit leadership. Our show endeavors to cover the most important nonprofit leadership topics with the goal of helping the audience reach their full potential as nonprofit leaders. Today, we welcome Autumn Strier, a highly driven nonprofit co-founder and CEO with extraordinary leadership skills and a passion for helping those in need. The nonprofit Autumn co-founded and leads is called Miracles for Kids, which helps families with critically ill children fight through bankruptcy, homelessness, hunger, depression, so they can fight for their child's life. Welcome to the show, Autumn. Thank you for joining us. I'm so grateful to you.
Hi, Chris. I'm very excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, let's start with your leadership origin story. Can you tell us a little bit about how you became the leader you are today?
Goodness. Well, it's a long story, so we'll try to truncate it, right? For some of us, it starts with childhood. For me, honestly, I was a recipient of some very kind individuals who, when I was very young, helped me to move forward in my life. And I think one of the greatest lessons that I learned is just that people that you don't know can reach out to you. They can help you in a time of need for you or your family. And that can actually completely change the trajectory of your life.
Mm.
And for me, it did. I think back to my early days and I think back to all of the people that came in and out of my life. I might not even know their names, right? You've got church leaders, you've got community organizers, you've got somebody who was just nice to you in a store or, in your school. And those individuals saw that maybe you needed a hand up, helping something, and they reminded you about the kindness and the goodness of people. And I may not remember their names, but they certainly were imprinted in me. And I think that was probably the time I decided that a life of service was for
Mm.
me, you know?
Amazing. Amazing. And that continued through high school, through college. And how did it manifest itself into your sort of first professional position or out of college?
So when I was in high school, so I come from a small town in the Mojave Desert.
Okay.
Some of us say it's a place to be from, not a place to go to. And even though, I do have family there and it's a beautiful desert town, in order for me to find a career, I really had to get out of there.
Yeah,
So,
fair.
I worked a lot when I was in high school and was a part of some nonprofits there, which really I took it with me when I went to UC Santa Barbara, which is where I got my undergrad.
Got it.
So I was a full scholarship kid with work study program. And for those of you that are listening in work study, it's a part of the university where you also get to earn hours as a way to thank them for letting you get a degree. So on top
Hmm. Hmm.
of education, I joined the Alumni Association. That was my job. And it was
Oh,
very interesting. I
yeah.
spent the first few years working 20 hours a week calling donors.
That's
And
what I
I
was going to
knew nothing
guess.
about a donor. What is a donor?
What is a donor?
What is a donor? Who are these incredible people who I'm going to call and they're going to talk to me and say, sure, I'll help. But that was really where it all started. And, I had the nonprofit side of me that I was the recipient of some things growing up. And then in college, I was working at a women's shelter. I was doing alumni work here through the work study program. And then when I was a junior, I started working for the city of Carpinteria, which is
Hmm.
a tiny town south of
Yeah.
Santa Barbara. It was a work
Great
study
town.
job, but it was in nonprofit management.
Interesting.
That was the city manager's, that was his educational background. He had an MPA. And he said, "Do you know anything about what this is?" And I said, "No." He said, "Well, it's, sort of an MBA for the government and the nonprofit sector."
Perfect.
Uh, okay. I was a poli-sci international relations major,
Yep. Yep.
spent a lot of time doing nonprofits. And when I graduated from college, I needed one more year to earn enough money to go to grad school. And
Okay.
there was a woman who was local and she was starting a nonprofit, and it was the Nonprofit Support Center of Santa Barbara County. I helped her launch that. And that was sort of the second step into figuring out nonprofit management and how you could impact somebody, learn along the way. And that was the year that I applied for graduate school to get my MPA.
Yep.
And I applied to NYU, which was great because I could work all day, and then I could go to school at night. And that was a wonderful way to put food on my table, pay rent, but then going to school at night and in the weekends could get a master's degree in 2 years. So it worked.
And and so you went to NYU. Did you physically work or live in New York?
I did. So I moved. I moved all the
Oh
way
my
from
gosh.
Santa Barbara to New York. I had, maybe $1 in my pocket,
Yeah, right.
but,
Not the
now.
easiest city to arrive in with $1 in your pocket.
But it's amazing. You know how many people told me you'll never make it in New York? You'll never make it. And I thought,
Really?
everyone can make it in New York, right? Might not be the city of angels, but it certainly is the city of dreams. And I got there and I had a roommate, so I had a place to live because NYU, they had graduate housing. And then I managed to get an interview with the at City of New York, so under Mayor Giuliani at the time. I was able to
Yeah,
get an
great.
interview with the deputy city mayor, and I got the job.
Fascinating.
So
Fascinating.
that's what I did. I worked for Mayor Giuliani for 2.5 years while I went to school at night, and it was wonderful.
What an experience.
It
What an
was.
experience. Yeah, that's great. And then you took the first flight back to California after you graduated, or
Oh
what happened?
no.
Oh no.
So I stayed in New York. I went from graduate school. I actually went on to Wall Street. So one
Okay.
of the things that was really cool about working for the city of New York is I was under the deputy mayor for operations. So New York is run a little bit like a country. And because there's 5 boroughs and it's massive, the deputy mayor for operations handled all of what are called the uniformed agencies. So I got to work on the budget with Mayor Giuliani, which was really a blessing, for what I do today,
Yeah,
considering
right.
how important it is to run your P&L and L and your balance sheet and to keep your eye on the ball as a CEO in the nonprofit world. But also, I worked in probation, in police, in sanitation, and really got to understand a lot about how those verticals within any city nationwide really run the city and how the budget ties into all of those core things that everyone needs. And of
Yeah.
course, city governments are nonprofits just like anything else. So it was an incredible opportunity for me to truly learn what was going on. And from there, I took my sort of finance hat and I went to Morgan Stanley and I joined the fixed income department where I
Okay.
was structuring debt for nonprofits and governments. So
Okay. Yeah.
the thing is, I needed to pay off everything. I put myself through undergrad and grad, so I needed a
Sure.
couple years to pay the bills.
Yeah,
So
no,
that's
and
what I
you got
did.
an education of a different sort that again probably contributed to your ability to run a nonprofit.
It is unbelievable how important it was.
Mm.
One of the things that whenever I'm talking to somebody or doing interviews about, how did you get where you are and what would you really recommend for any nonprofit leader, I will tell you that, understanding finance, books, budget, all of it, it was an unbelievable entree to what I do today.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't believe that the best leaders in the nonprofit space all come up from within sort of the nonprofit sector or within that same organization. Many do, but I
Absolutely.
think the variety of experiences from inside and outside the nonprofit sector really do help to contribute to its richness, as long as those that come from outside the sector don't come in with the misunderstanding that those here in the nonprofit world don't know anything about anything,
Oh
right?
gosh, no, of course not. And I think there are so many transferable skill sets, no matter what industry you come from. I even hire very often from the private sector, depending on what I'm looking for. There's so many compassionate individuals who have incredible skill sets
Very
that
good.
bring value to the world that we live in, and an efficiency level and a pace
Yep.
that really, at the end of the day, can be attractive to your donor base, depending on, who you're looking to attract. And
Sure. That's
we'll
great.
probably get into some of those conversations about corporate partnerships and the way those come to play. But from Wall Street, I was there 5 years.
Okay.
It was wonderful. One of my favorite projects, my very first, was a $34 million bond deal that I got to structure on my own for my very first nonprofit, and that was the JFK Performing Center of the Arts in DC.
Okay. Interesting.
Right? Because I
Yeah,
truly did structure debt for nonprofits. Nonprofits very often go to the market
of
just
course.
to have debt, and they were building, in their case, a parking garage. Not very sexy, but still.
One of those things that does probably require more financing than fundraising.
It does in bond deals and debt, just a structured way to pay something off. And it
Sure.
was wonderful. And it reminded me how much I love the arts in that area in nonprofit industry. And from there, it was easy to transition back into the nonprofit world because even though I was in the private sector, my deal internally was that as long as I'm continuing to do good, even though personally I had some debt to take care of, I was able to still work with the kind of people that I most love spending my time with.
That's great. That's great. And so after those 5 years on Wall Street, then you came back to California?
Couple years, we're still a couple years. So,
Okay.
in the last few months of my years at Morgan Stanley was 9/11. So I was there that day.
Yeah.
uh,
Wow.
Deeply, deeply impacted. I was on a train on our way into the city,
Oh my
saw
gosh.
the first building hit. I was in the city that day, and when that happened, and 4 months later, I left Morgan Stanley, but deeply impacted by everything that happened there. Really felt
Naturally.
that it was time to, get back to where I was headed. So I left Morgan Stanley. Spent a couple of months soul searching, having great conversations, and ended up at the MS Society.
Okay.
So I took a job as the statewide public policy manager for state of New Jersey, the National MS Society. And I did that. And that's the job that I brought with me as I transitioned back into California and then ended up in Orange County, which I've never lived in before, but have called home since 2004.
Okay. And did you transition with MS Society from New Jersey into California?
I did. It
Okay.
was a job that I did remotely while I was building my family, while they looked for a replacement. I
Yep.
still traveled back to the Hill, did some advocacy work. Uh,
Interesting. Okay.
but it was a wonderful position. The MS Society is an extraordinary organization. Loved my time there.
Yeah.
Actually grew up with a personal friend who had MS, so I felt deeply tied to that and
Yeah.
the rights of individuals with disabilities. So that kind of advocacy work on the Hill was
Mm.
something that I loved, was able to bring some lobbying groups up there, talk to our representatives, really enjoyed that period of my life. And because I have a political science degree, that was within my wheelhouse. So it wasn't straight lobbying, it was more advocacy work, but it was wonderful.
Yeah, yeah. Well, how did you stumble into creating, co-founding, developing Miracles for Kids?
So if we jump back to the very first question you asked me, which is
Yeah.
sort of my childhood and how it all started for me, how was I drawn
Yeah.
to a life of service? Uh, I needed a job when I was in elementary school. And my sixth and seventh grade teacher was my English teacher. She was pregnant. Um, I'm an only child of a single parent, so it's not like I understand siblings and babysitting, but I thought, my gosh, I'm too young to get an actual job. So I asked her if she would hire me as her babysitter.
Okay.
And she did. She knew my home situation and I need to earn some money. Her younger brother is my co-founder of Miracles for Kids.
Oh my gosh.
I know. So I started traveling with the family. They were very kind to me. Um, on occasion, the younger brother would be on the trip with the Ellingson family. That's the family that I was the babysitter for until I went to college. And
Wow.
I know. And we stayed connected. And all these years later, he learned that I moved down here to Orange County. He had a mortgage company.
Hmm. Hmm.
And when he found out I moved here, he had a really great mortgage company operating in the primary and secondary markets. So you're 2004, you're in the housing bubble, you got a lot going on. And he's like, Autumn, my gosh, 3 or 4 years ago, we got a tax ID letter so that our employees could, have some tax write-off if they donated to sort of wear jeans on Fridays kind of a thing.
Yep.
And they would donate it to an employee contribution fund.
Yep.
And
Right.
they would use that to, donate a little bit to local charities. And he said, we're so busy in this market, but here you are. And I said, well, oh my gosh, no, I'm working for the MS Society. And he said, but I have this tax ID letter, which is gold for anyone. And I went home that day. It was actually my birthday, 2004. I was 9 months pregnant with number two. I had Griffin, my son, with me, and you and I both love that name.
Yep.
And he said, just think about it. I came home, my husband said, are you nuts? Why would you not build your own? Why, this is so deep in your DNA, helping
Right.
others, because you needed so much help, when you were younger. And I slept on it. I woke up the next day and I said, okay, I'm in. I'll do it. I'll build it. And that's how it all started.
Amazing. And so that was how many years ago? And tell me a little bit about the organization today, these many years later.
So 21 years. So we
Wow.
celebrated our 20th anniversary in December of last year. So huge part of my heart and soul is Miracles for Kids. I'm very proud
Mm.
of it.
Yeah.
Certainly never did any of it on my own, but
Right.
it is definitely a job, but not one, right? Part of my life. Uh, so I mentioned I was 9 months pregnant. I gave birth to Charlotte the following month, January 18th of 2005. Uh, at 32 weeks, she had some issues in utero. And when she was 5 days old, I ended up in our local children's hospital. So
Mm.
Children's Hospital of Orange County, for
Yep.
anyone who's listening, a world-renowned hospital, obviously, but in our backyard. And I was a patient there. Um, and Charlotte had stopped breathing. And so they did a battery of tests. We became inpatient for 4 days. And when I was there, there was a family in the room next to us. And I happened to overhear a story of a family who was struggling with a child battling what is a life-threatening illness, leukemia in this family's case. And they were struggling. And, it was something that stuck with me. So even though I knew before I gave birth to Charlotte that we would be building a mission and an organization around something dealing with children and illness, it was that moment, that light bulb in the hospital with Charlotte that I knew that I would write a mission statement to support families in crisis with critically ill children. And that is the genesis of Miracles for Kids.
Cool. That mission statement that you wrote all those many years ago, um, has it pretty much stood the test of time?
It is today exactly the mission that it
Come
was.
on, 20 years later.
21 years later, yes, 20 years in 1 month, 2 months, 3 months.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
Amazing.
because, honestly, the most important part is finding something that contributes. Companies are built to compete, right? Be the best in your space, but charities are built to contribute. I would never want to replicate something. And when I started to get into the idea of how to write a mission statement,
Yeah.
Really held deep in my soul that I never wanted to compete with somebody that was already in the space doing
Sure.
phenomenal work in the space. I
Makes
wanted to
sense.
be an add-on, right? For lack of a better term. Did a little bit of research. I called Chalk. I met a wonderful social worker named Mitzi, and I said, what do you need? What don't our families have?"
Oh, perfect.
And she said, red tape is the end for our families. It's how they become homeless. By the time they are able to get through everything to actually fill an application out to try to get some aid so that they can be with their child and they don't lose their home, their job, their savings, their belongings, their story has changed because they're in the ICU, but then they're home. Their stories are so dynamic, so not static, that by the time their application gets to somebody to read it, it's already different.
Yeah,
And they
and
need a private solution.
we hear the statistics about how so many families are just one medical kind of emergency away from bankruptcy or devastation, right?
They are.
And so then to see that in the
And that
worst,
doesn't change.
it doesn't
It
change.
doesn't change, which is why the mission hasn't changed. So I wrote a very encompassing or generic mission, right? So we support families with critically ill children. And we keep it simple because the version of support is different. When we started our first year, 2005, we served 31 families with one grant, and it went toward a basic need, right? Food on the table, gas in the car, your medical bill, your insurance copay, I'm there. We'll do that.
Yep.
Today we have 5 programs. We serve over 400 families every single day, some 1,600 to 2,000 people. We have housing solutions and all this, other things, advocacy, wellness, bill pay. We do all of those things, but at the end of the day, they still support. Now, today I might use the word stabilize because I've become better at my definition of support, but it
Right.
still is the same mission it was way
Oh,
back.
which is wonderful. Well, in all of those different jobs that you've had, leading to this one, which I'm sure has evolved dramatically over the 20 years, we might have to talk about how your job has evolved. What's been your favorite role?
I guess a couple things. I think hands down, the most amazing thing that I ever get to do, it's such a blessing, is just to sit with our families.
Hmm.
So every family has a different story, right? As we all in the nonprofit world know, everybody comes to an organization with a different reality, a different background. For me, it's how did you get to need miracles? What is it that brought you to us? And the stories are all different. Whether they need us, they need to move into Miracle Manor, one of our housing complexes. They need mental health services. Their child learned to speak because they were at our surf and paddle program. There's just, there's unbelievable stories, and they're generous with their time. They're generous with private stories. And I feel like that's probably the greatest honor of my life is just sitting with them and them telling us, this is who we are. We're going through this thing and we'll get on the other side of it somehow, but this is who we are today and let me share that. Someone's testimony is it's invaluable.
Well, do tell me how has the job as a co-founder and CEO for you changed over the 21 years? You were doing different things 21 years ago, but you're probably doing some of the same things as well. Like how has life as a leader changed for you in those 21 years?
I mean, I think it's the obvious stuff, to start with. It was just me, right?
Yeah,
On
good
a
point.
laptop on my couch with a baby in a bucket, right? And then another couple to come along the way. And today it's different. We are 5 departments. We're 25 employees. We have a physical location and 2 housing complexes, and we're 1,000 volunteers strong. So, it's an extraordinary growth period over the 20 years. For me, I think every day I try to focus on the same things, which is, how do we reach someone? How do we bring someone in need in? How do I make a connection to a new donor, a new volunteer? How am I able to further our advocacy to bring someone closer to our mission? Maybe the methods of how I am doing those things change because of the strength of the board, strength of our corporate partners, maybe the strength of our staff our ability to grow staff. What was once me and an intern is today different.
Yeah.
Uh, but at the same time, the story is still the same, which is even though our economy goes up and down, I've been through a few recessions now, I've been through a pandemic. I've continued to grow the organization over what are either regional or global crises. The positioning is still the same because those that we serve at or below the poverty level, those that we serve still have health crises and
Yeah.
mental and physical health and all of those things that families battle. Those are still the same, no matter what goes on in an external world. Health is still the great equalizer.
Health is still the great equalizer. Yeah, so true. So true. Uh, Over the years, I'm sure you've come across a fair number of people that have positively impacted your life from a leadership perspective, taught you, encouraged you, supported you. Who are some of those folks, and what did that mean to your leadership career?
Gosh, I think I'll probably start with just saying that I have an incredible board of directors who I count among my closest friends now, many of whom have been with me since we started,
Jeez.
2007 and 8. One of them, we call him our intrapreneur with an I, not an E, even though in his case, he's a CEO growing his own business, doing a phenomenal job. He's always been an incredible mentor because he pushes me, he questions, he challenges. He doesn't just say yes to anything. He reads everything.
Okay.
He is, when Miracle Manor was a concept that I brought to the board, we didn't fight, but at a retreat, we had hours and hours of heated debate over what is the right next step for the organization. And he's now in his 11th year on my board, and he is still one of the great inspirations, I think, to others on the board. So he's been a wonderful mentor, still is, and a friend.
That's
But
great.
mostly because he doesn't just sit idly or vote yes on everything. I can always count on him to go, I'm not so sure, and then, make your case. And I think that's important for all of us. I think it's really important to
So important.
force conversation.
The courageous conversations, difficult conversations, asking the clarifying questions.
Yes, so important because they force you to remind yourself why you're bringing it up, right?
Hmm.
And you know what? We're all wrong sometimes, and that's just as important. And the wonderful thing about a board is it's about the mission. It's always about the mission. So they've got the mission first. So definitely some of those folks, inspirational mentors along the way. Uh, My grandma Griffin, I will always add her, who is my son's namesake. She died at 104 many, many years ago, but through childhood, still to today, one of her greatest phrases was always take the high road. In leadership, I think that's very important. I think as leaders, we have an opportunity to engage in things we shouldn't. I think taking the high road in our leadership, taking the high road, when you're running your company, I think all that is very important. So I certainly count my grandma is great inspiration. And then we have a lot of corporate partners who lead by example. I find all of their work very inspiring as well.
Neat. Oh, that's wonderful. Well, we'll definitely talk about the corporate partnerships in a minute. But before we do, I'd love to kind of talk a little bit about some of the other leadership philosophies that you've developed over time. Sounds like Grandma Griffin left you with a great one that might be foundational. Always take the high road in nonprofit leadership, advice to take to heart and to live by for sure. But as you have matured as a leader, what kind of philosophy around your own leadership have you developed, or what do you find are the things that you keep recommending or drawing from or going back to that for you are just so important or non-negotiable, I guess, in leading your organization?
One of the neat things about the office that we have here at Miracles, is that in our break room, we have a handful of those things written in chalk on our walls.
Oh,
And
I should
all
have done the interview there.
I'll be sure and send you a little snippet of it. But it's a collaboration over years of all of the philosophies, or maybe bumper stickers that some of my staff laughingly joke about.
Yeah.
There's never a problem. There's only an opportunity for a new solution. That one is up there.
Write that one down.
Margaret
That's a good one.
Mead's Margaret Mead has a famous quote. Never doubt that a small group of people can change the world because indeed it's the only thing that ever has. That is on every wall of every building, in every Miracles for Kids office I've ever had in 20 years.
Neat.
I
Yeah.
truly believe that. I believe our grassroots work is life altering for the communities that we're in. A very important one. Rainbows and unicorns is always up there for us.
What
The
does
reason
that mean? Yeah, tell
I
me.
know, for some of us, we work in some very difficult spaces. I work in a world where a child dies almost every day. I work in a world where we see a lot of death. We have loss of life here on a daily basis, and we have an entire casework team that deals very deeply in conversations with families who are struggling with children at final stages of life. So rainbows and unicorns, there is a philosophy of always find your balance. And sometimes all we have to say is rainbows and unicorns, right? Some people will say doors and windows, right? When one door closes, a window opens.
Okay.
For a family, there are always sunrises the next day. There is always an opportunity for your family to find balance. And for us, that translates to the holistic approach we take to caring for our families because we have a lot of siblings, a lot of caregivers who are left when a child is diagnosed and going through a treatment process. There's a lot of people that aren't paid attention to. And so we try to focus on that, right? A holistic look at everyone that's affected, find the balance, find the rainbows and the unicorns for our families when they can't see it. So for us, that's a little bit of that. And it's an important one internally here.
Yeah.
So we focus on those things. I always say no one in this building will ever work harder than me. I believe very deeply in work ethic. I
Yeah.
believe very deeply in always leading by example in your work. I'm always 24/7. I'm always around the clock. I'm always available to donors, volunteers, to staff. I think that's important.
Really
Um,
important. Yeah.
Very
And
important. I don't want any of our young people to come into our industry and think, my gosh, right? Like I'm working so hard, but everybody around here, they're not. And in our industry, we don't see that very often. We always have these very heart forward leaders, but in other industries, it's more common. And I feel that that's an important thing to do is to lead by example for those that will follow us. And hopefully
mhm.
they stand on our shoulders.
Yeah, yeah. And I think there's a tension around work-life balance for a leader because clearly you've given heart and soul to this organization, and it's not a typical job that you where you'd clock in and clock out. You're always on call. You're almost like the emergency doctor for the organization. But that's a choice that you've made,
Absolutely.
and and you would not choose it any differently. And so I think it's important to make that distinction though, right? Like the choice I've made to invest this time is a calling for me and it's a part of my DNA. It's not that I have that same expectation for you in the job that you're providing, but at the same time, for those that aspire to this sort of responsibility of leadership, um, if it's not a calling, if it's not in your DNA to kind of commit to that sort of difficult lifestyle of constant being on call constantly, then you might be having some issues in the future with that choice.
Well, and I think that's an important conversation to have because we do have we have an incredible team here and work-life balance or finding what makes your life work between your commitments and what's going on in your private life, very important. We talked a little bit about the changes over the years. One of
Yeah.
the things that I'm incredibly proud of is the way that our team has found balance. One of the great things that we do here is we have during the summer, June, July, and August, everyone on the staff, from assistants all the way up, they get 1 day to work from home, and we create that environment. The summer potlucks and the work from home opportunities, the malleability of every department to work together as a team and make sure responsibilities are covered, but also that they can talk to their supervisors should there be things going on. I think that creates the environment that you want, right? Because everyone comes to work with the opportunity to help someone else, but that doesn't mean that what you have going on at home isn't just as important, certainly to me. I take my team, and their health and happiness, as seriously as I take my family's. So there is absolutely a balance. We talked about the role of being a CEO. It includes all of those things. And yes, in leadership, whatever the title is, you take that on as well, right? At the end of the day, it's your responsibility. And you have to provide inspiration, but also a balance, a perfect path for anyone who chooses to join you.
I love it. Great. Well, let's transition a bit into the focus of our nonprofit leadership topic. And today we're covering or jumping into the essentials of building a successful company in the nonprofit sector from the ground up. And you have that great experience of being a founder, of building something from scratch. And it's not everybody's leadership story, but it is an important one. I think because there are aspiring leaders out there who want to create something from whole cloth, let's say. And then there are others who have been in their sort of leadership roles who find themselves maybe doing a little bit too much stewardship and not enough vision casting and really trying more entrepreneurial ways of doing things in the future. So I think the conversation has resonance with all types of different leaders. But let's jump in and let's start with sort of your mission statement, which we've talked about a little bit. And what I'm interested in gathering from you is what guidance you would give to the audience around creating the right mission statement for their organization.
Sure. I think it goes back a little bit to how I stumbled onto our mission statement, which is finding an area in your community that needs to be addressed. What
Hmm.
what is something that needs to be contributed that you can provide, right? Because if there are 10 different services already existing as a business model, it would be very difficult for you to secure a new donor base,
Right.
because you'd be going up existing models that, by all accounts, are probably working and working very well if they're
Right.
in existence in the community, right? So, it's a question of how to build the business model. The business model is the mission statement in our industry. So I would start with that. That's what I did. What isn't being addressed in our community? Where is an underserved population, a non-addressed item? And what could you do? What could you build around that? And that's
Hmm.
how Miracles for Kids was created. There was an underserved population with a crisis that's not being addressed, certainly by the private sector here. And Miracles for Kids is the solution to that. And
Yeah.
so that's, the first approach would be, what draws you, what inspires you? And then based on research, a lot of research, is that something you could contribute that would have the support of the donor base that you're trying to attract?
Yeah. Yeah. And did you find that because you were venturing into a territory that was underfunded or under-resourced or both, um, that you were able to find donors that weren't necessarily giving to similar things or organizations that were duplicative of your own services? Or was there a natural audience to give to your organization because of the uniqueness of it?
So I would say yes, because the mission was built to address a need in the community. We had sort of our first step forward, right?
Mhm.
We knew that when we came in and sat down and had a conversation of why should I help you, it was because you're a pillar in the community. You want to be of service to families and children, right? The research would have shown that that individual had a drawing to children and or families, and it wasn't being addressed. So that's the entree, right? To get you to sit down. And then it's a question of, well, how effective is your business model at meeting that need? So, we do something different with our revenue that we raise, but we're just like a private sector company. We don't keep the revenue, we give it away, right? So when you think about it as a company, our company has this mission statement. We're going to do this with what we raise, and we're going to be most effective at doing it because here's the outcomes, right? We look at outcomes measurement in our world. Even as we begin as a nonprofit, you still want to be able to say, this will be the results. You give me this money, and I will be able to do the following thing, which will achieve something. And it can be incredibly simplistic, like mine was. I mean, I paid a bill. That's all I was able to say we could accomplish. I didn't have staff, I didn't have resources, I didn't have anything. But I had a mission statement, and I was able to say I could do this one thing that there wasn't anywhere else someone could go to have that addressed.
Yeah, that's great. Well, we'll jump into fundraising in a minute, but
Yeah.
what I'm fascinated to understand is how you approached the recruitment of your board, and what advice you would give all these many years later about board recruitment, board building, board engagement, all of those kinds of things.
Well, and going back into the business model of how you start to architect an organization has to do with exactly who I went for at the board level as well. So I was taking a very basic business model approach. So I went looking for CEOs and entrepreneurs, individuals who also in their CV or in their history, they
Mhm.
also were addressing the same type of need, right? Their businesses were growing in the Orange County or Southern California community in this case because they were going to be best in class at something. They were building a business where there was an opportunity to get revenue and to grow because somebody else didn't bring to market something similar. And so I went to several different individuals in different industries who were leaders in those industries and tried to build a board where I wasn't duplicating. I didn't have five realtors. I didn't have five individuals in the retail industry. Maybe
Right.
it's clothing,
Five
maybe it's
bankers, five
right?
lawyers.
Five of anything. I was trying to get different black books. I don't need five people who know the same people. I
Yeah,
need five
yeah,
people who know five successful different people.
yeah,
So I started very simply, right? Very common. Try to be diverse in the industries. Try to get somebody from every industry that has success in the region you're serving
yeah,
because there's a very good chance that those successful companies will also have some form of social responsibility built into their corporate mandate. Those individuals will already have philanthropy sort of built in. So I started with that. And then the second layer to that is you have to address why they personally or professionally would be connected to your mission. So, second, do they have children? Do they have kids in school? Has cancer or another life-threatening illness touched their life?
right.
Uh, Sometimes you can't get that just by going online, but sometimes you can by doing your research.
Yeah,
Do all of the footwork before you sit down with somebody and know that they're connected somehow.
sure.
Elementary school, where do they give to college? What are their philanthropic ties, or what do they like to do on the weekends? Is it soccer, little league? There's so many different ways that you can tell that somebody would be drawn to your mission. And
Yeah.
then, from there, it's a conversation. That's when you have to just be impressive, right? That's when you come in ready to go with, here's what I can deliver. If you believe in the mission, here's what I can promise will be the outcome.
What did you tell people their responsibilities would be 21 years ago versus how you tell them about their responsibilities today?
Oh, it's so different.
Yeah, I have to believe. I mean, and let's be
Yes,
real. When you're trying to build an organization and prove that you're worth something, you're pretty happy anytime you get a yes, I'll help you out, even though you might not have the details or expectations clearly defined, right? And
yes.
now you probably have a very specific set of expectations that you need fulfilled of your board members.
We do. When it starts, everything is about connection. It's about conversation. It's about could you open a door? Could you get me a meeting? Could I sit with somebody who's influential in your personal or professional life? Could you do those things for me? So
Yeah,
you quantify that. In my case, I think it was, could I have 5 new conversations from you in the first quarter? Right?
great. Yeah,
Right. Could I have, and what I do with that is on me, right? It's
yeah,
my
right,
job to
right, right, right.
close. But could you open the door for me? Could you come to meetings because there's value in quantity when it comes to board meetings? You're only as good as the energy that gets created from that board meeting, the
Yeah, that's
synthesis,
so
the
good.
excitement. You're only as good as the energy that you can create from each other. And it's a matter of the board members need to see themselves in each other. If I am a serious CEO who's Fortune 100, whatever, I want at least one other of those individuals that I can connect with. If I'm a just starting bootstraps entrepreneur, I want one of those that I can connect with. So
Mhm.
you want a lot of that camaraderie, and it's on us to board build. We have to find all of that for them because we promise our board members that they will get all of those things in a win-win scenario out of being on our board. And that's one thing that crossed the 20 years. I promise you that if you join this, it will benefit you in more ways than I can count today, but I promise there will be value.
That's good. Yeah, that's good. I mean, I hear that and totally understand that as much as we hope our board members are only on a board for the mission, only on the board to do whatever they can to advance the mission. And that's the only reason for their involvement and engagement. It's just not the case, right? There's a community that board members are looking for. There's connection, there's inspiration, there's a lot of give and take.
There
And I
is.
think, yeah, I think people fail to understand how important it is for leaders, nonprofit leaders, to feed board members, what they need out of the involvement so that they'll be more inclined to engage in the more traditional sense of giving back, giving of themselves, giving financially, giving of their, network, whatever it is.
Well, and the board conversation is so interesting. I mean, you could do days on it, right? Because
Of course.
there's it's critical to the success of every nonprofit, but it's not something that is ever static. One of the things that I have found, and I'm sort of in a unique position as a founder of the organization, I'm also the founding president of the board, and I am still today both the CEO and the board president. And
Interesting. Okay.
I've been both for this entire journey. And one of the things that I found the most useful is you have to stay in connection, direct one-on-one connection with every single member of the board in either of these roles. Because if you let it just be committee run, if you let it go by the wayside and you just do a touch point every 1 or 2 quarters, you might miss how their worlds are changing. Did they retire? Did something change professionally for them? Are they starting a new venture? Are the connections that are new to them going to change their desire to stay on your board? Because there are rotating boards. There are boards that are 2 years that you seat, and then there are board seats that'll stay, in some cases on my board, 10, 15 years and more. And there's nothing wrong with either of those things, but loyalty can be shifting, and it can not be for a negative reason, but it can be shifting because somebody missed that their worlds are shifting. And I've seen that over and over again, so many different chapters of why a board member might shift to a different nonprofit, might shift to a different region, might move out of state, but you can still keep them. I mean, there's different ways that you can create a win-win with your board member if you maintain a very one-on-one conversation. And in my world, it is, can you constantly send a text to every member of your board and it not be a surprise? It be a welcome text, and it's not formal, it's colloquial, it's conversational.
Yeah,
Do you have that type of relationship with your board member? Because if you don't, you should work on it. It's
that's
something
great.
that you should constantly be achieving. And I have found that in the 20 years, that's always worked.
Yeah, no, it's good advice. Good advice. We seem to be tackling a lot of issues that could take 3 or more days to cover, even as to scratch the surface. So I'll try another one that is really heavy, but we'll try to focus maybe on the early days, how you began and how you built, and that's programs. You mentioned early on that in the earliest year or years, it was about kind of granting families some support that they absolutely needed, they were in dire need of at that time, and you grew and developed new programs and whatnot. How did you approach the creation of your programs?
It's an interesting question. So, to your point, we did start with what we called the grant program, right? We gave out 31 checks in that 1 year to 31 families. The beauty of being at the grassroots, building an organization is I had time for 31 conversations. I had time for 31 conversations weekly. So I got really close to those 31 families who then
Right.
became 70, who then became 100 families. And having those conversations allowed me to learn from the families what they
Mm,
needed.
good.
And that is how programs are built. They're
Great.
never in a vacuum. I never added a layer of a program unless I determined that there was not just a full need across all the families for those programs, but then the idea of the program, I was able to turn it into the community and try to figure out, will I have in-kind donations for this program? Will I
Well,
get donors? Could I get sponsors? What could I do with this that will turn it from a pilot into a full-fledged program? We have 5 programs here, and they were layered along the many years.
right.
Uh, and it took time to build them. And we built them slowly and over time. And the funny joke that we have here at the office is don't come into Autumn's office with a new idea. She might just create a program around it.
Hmm, hmm.
Because, it comes from our families. They tell us what they need. I then figure out if there's a business model that can be built from it. And if I can figure it out, then we'll launch it. And that's how
Yeah.
all of our programs were created. It all comes from the families themselves who are the recipients of the mission.
Yeah, which is totally appropriate. And these aren't one-off requests that don't kind of connect to a lot of families. These are probably things that you see a pattern where families seem to be struggling with these, I'm sure, and it's not the last time that you're going to see this issue. It's just a continuation of a long line of people that need the help. Um, how then did you access fundraising or develop the mechanisms to support financially these programs, right? You want to help, right? The desire to help these families is so strong, but that doesn't guarantee that you can deliver the services or items that they desperately need. You need to have the capacity to either purchase them, build them, or whatever. So often, I imagine that comes from straight out fundraising, either in kind or cash donations to do that. So how did you approach that?
The Basket of Miracles is probably a great example of that. That's one of our programs that has stood the test of time.
Okay.
It was the result of having one of those conversations. I delivered a check with a board member in 2007, and the mom said, "Thank you so much. This helps us with our rent. We don't have the ability to put food on our table." And we thought, okay, how can we help with that? It was early December. And, the solution is Well, we can connect our community of volunteers to delivering in-kind goods, in this case, Christmas dinner, Christmas tree, presents, something that can help a family not need to use their discretionary income, of which they have so little, that needs to go to gas to get to the hospital, that needs to go for a copay, that needs to go for a pharmacy bill. How can we divert that? So that was boom. Okay. Every family has that. We need to knock down their need to use the very little income they have left for those things by solving that one problem. That was Basket of Miracles. We started with Holiday Basket of Miracles, and we took that program to the market. We said, do we have individuals that would donate food, Christmas trees? Do we have volunteers that would come and wrap gifts and deliver so we don't have to ship? Do we have donors that would go out and buy them gifts if we gave them a wish list? I mean, and it just sort of snowballs from there. What started as the Holiday Basket of Miracles is now Spring Basket of Miracles, Back to School Basket of Miracles, Thanksgiving Basket of Miracles, and Holiday Basket of Miracles, a year-round program that now runs throughout the year. This past year, giving out, 10,000 toys, with every family of our 450 families adopted, every family member having a wish list and every wish list being fulfilled. So,
Wow.
but it grows, it takes time. You can't go too fast. You have to be deliberate, you have to be slow. You can't be over your skis and from your profit and loss statement. Like you have to be very, very careful with it. But that's how they grow slowly and over time. And you go to the community with those things and you figure out where you can find support. And if there's an opportunity for a brand stamp, oh my gosh, there's fundraising right there. Some sponsor will put their brand on that some family is carrying, that volunteer is delivering. There's an opportunity, for a partnership there. So it just grows from there and you see it. And that's, one of the many programs that we have here now.
And it seems as though you've been especially successful in developing corporate partnerships. I know you've found success in individual giving, grant funding, all of the different fundraising areas, but you've been very strong in the corporate partnership area. Why is that?
Well, I think it's a combination of things. I would say that the approach to a conversation with a corporate partner needs to address where they're coming from. I have always found that uh, deep research, true understanding of what their corporate model is, whether it incorporates CSR or you can help them to grow CSR,
Mhm.
social responsibility, because we all know, in our industry, CSR results into employee retention. We all know that there's an importance to having that value proposition, even in a corporate entity, and it creates employee bonding. Corporate partnerships are something I lean into here at the office. I have somebody on my development team who is responsible for going into corporations and running employee partner days, volunteer hours, connection
Wow.
to family. We have an entire vertical that is about that,
Hmm.
bringing
Fascinating.
assemblies, running the assemblies for them. Because I found that companies sometimes they don't have people, they would love to do it, but they don't have somebody to run it, right?
Sure. Sure. Of
So
course.
I create the solution to that. We have somebody who runs it. We have the collateral, we have the videos, we explain the mission. We'll do your social media, we'll send you everything. We'll be your insert in your newsletter. We just try to create one-stop shopping. We want to make it easy for someone to say, okay, Miracles, come into the office and hey, if you can do that lunch hour once a quarter for this department, we'll sign up. We would love to be your corporate partner. And then we give them access to all of our volunteer programs too. They don't have to do anything. So I have always found that if you can solve their problem, meet them in the middle, and be a win-win, it's an easy yes, right? It's an easy yes for anyone.
That's great. Yeah, perfect. That's great. It's good advice. Will be very helpful. Last but not least, I wanted to chat about building a brand for the organization, getting the word out, and really becoming a household name, if you will, but a trusted and recognizable organization. You've done that. You continue to build that brand, but you have done a marvelous job of branding, and it's great because it doesn't often happen that a startup, let's say, can emerge to be so much more recognizable than organizations that have been around for 50 to 100 years, right? So I know some of it is in the way that you tell stories, in the look and feel of the logo and the materials that you create, both digital and print, et cetera. But tell me a little bit about how you created such a strong brand.
I feel like, it's a combination certainly of some of those things that I've brought from the private sector. Um, Always wanting to make sure that you present yourself externally, both on paper, in digital, and in person, absolutely on point,
Yeah.
right? You're clean, you're professional, you're above board, you make the brand feel how your corporate culture is, right? You mirror the entities that you go into, which is incredibly important. Um, Brand ambassadorship is probably, though, the number one thing that every volunteer, every board member, every staff member, anyone who wears our logo, uh, we hope that they feel proud to be, representing the organization. We ask for it.
Yeah.
Please tell others about the experience you have. We are constantly with all of our school clubs. We have about 26 school clubs that we work with. We have all of our corporate partners, the boards, and then through our events, just try to represent, the kind of organization that someone would see themselves in, and then ask them to turn around and share what their feeling was like. Did I get to connect to the family? Yes. Well, gosh, I got to be direct to service. How did you do that? Well, we did that through Miracles for Kids. They created the opportunity for us to touch a life directly. And the other thing that I'll say is be transparent. I think that we've earned the trust of everyone in the community because of our
Mm,
transparency. I
yeah.
am I even have t-shirts that share what our functional expense percentage is. It's a joke here inside the organization, but we work incredibly hard to be trusted, to where, everyone who gives us a dollar knows exactly where it goes. They can call anyone in the organization and feel very proud that they know where their dollar went, that they can access our financials, that they can come in our office, that they feel that they understand who we are, how we feel, and that they constantly know that we are to be trusted. And I think that's scratching the surface of it, but I think that's the first step. It's all about trust in the nonprofit industry and the belief that you see in the charity that you choose a part of yourself in them. I think that's incredibly important.
It's really good. Well, what other advice would you give the audience as we wrap up our conversation about how to survive those early years and thrive into the future? Because I know there's a lot of nonprofits that are probably feel like they're hanging on just to dear life and um, need some good advice maybe on survival and being prepared to thrive.
In those early years, passion is incredibly important. Purpose is incredibly important, but strategy is everything. So, in our world, we almost need a more diverse business model than a corporate entity, because every year we have to reinvent the wheel based on the economy, based on changing donor base, based on changing volunteer base. I
Mm.
would say that you need to be several layers thick in your strategy, in your business model. You're going to go with this one approach, and if it doesn't work, you need to have alternative approaches. You need to, in your fundraising, I'm going to launch this idea, but if that doesn't work with this demographic, I'm also concurrently going to be having these conversations in these other areas, whether it's industries, demographics, partnerships, whatever it is. You can't be a one and done. Those early years are very, very difficult. You're going to fail more than you're going to succeed, but you're going to learn from it, right? I did. I fell down so many times.
Right.
But then you get back up and you learn from it and you move forward. And Resilience will it'll get you to the next day, but it's all about strategy, business strategy. And if you
Mhm.
have that and you wrap it with passion and purpose, you're going to be one of those that makes it to their 21st year.
And that's what people want. And I say people, the word just popped out of my mouth. You said passion, purpose. Um, I added people because you've benefited from having extraordinary people around you who could help you develop strategy sometimes, but maybe more so to help you implement your strategy. And so I always find that having the right people, surrounding yourself as a leader with the right people makes some incredible things happen as well. Um,
No, it's incredibly important. Places like Fulcrum are where you can fill the void if you don't have those. You need community. You can't do anything in a vacuum. And community is incredibly important, if for no other reason, for you to just have someone to bounce ideas off of.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I know you've had great thought partnership with your staff, with your board members, with your donors, with other community leaders, both in the for-profit business world and the nonprofit world as well. And just wanted to thank you for sharing, Autumn, your expertise and wisdom with the audience. It was a wonderful conversation, and there's a lot for people to not only unpack, but to learn and grow from. Again, as I said earlier, not only for those that are in sort of the early life stages of their nonprofit, but those that are with organizations or in leadership roles where things might feel like they're stagnant or stagnating, which is equally dangerous. There's always a need to continue to be entrepreneurial, to be visionary, be future ready. And I love what you said about focusing on the needs that are unmet in the community as a baseline kind of mission for the organization that will no doubt find a way to help more people, but also find an audience willing to support those kinds of activities. But the conversation that we've had is unfortunately coming to a close. I wanted to thank all of you for joining today and encourage you all to please subscribe, to please also jump into our other podcasts, the Mastering Fundraising podcast, as well as the Nonprofit Edge podcast. All of them are focused, like today, on conversations with extraordinary leaders who are tackling some of the most interesting leadership issues of the day. And until next time, we wish you all the best and encourage you all to do what you can for this world by leading for good. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us for this most recent episode of Lead for Good. Our passion is helping nonprofit leaders reach their full potential as leaders, and we sincerely hope this episode has been edifying for you. Please subscribe to this podcast to not miss any of our Lead for Good conversations. We welcome your feedback, suggestions, and comments via email at hello@fulcrumleader.com. Lead for Good is a production of Fulcrum Nonprofit Leadership. Please visit us on the web at www.fulcrumleader.com. Until next time, we wish you all the best and encourage you to always lead for good.